Have you ever wondered what would happen if a man who had everything gave it all away? Not for charity, but to find the one thing his money couldn't buy: true love. This is the incredible story of a billionaire who faked his own bankruptcy, all to find a woman who would love him for who he was, not for what was in his bank account. But he never could have guessed that the single biggest threat to his happiness would be the very lie that started it all. Johnathan Vance was a name that echoed in boardrooms and was whispered on stock exchange floors. As the CEO of Vance Industries, he had built an empire from scratch. His life was a highlight reel of penthouse apartments, private jets, and exclusive parties. From the outside, it looked like he had it all. But inside his gilded cage, Johnathan was completely and utterly alone. Every relationship felt like a business deal, a negotiation where his net worth was the main attraction. He grew tired of the practiced smiles and the calculating eyes that looked right through him and only saw dollar signs. The final straw came at his own birthday party. A woman he'd been seeing for 6 months raised a glass not to him, but to his unending success. In that moment, surrounded by hundreds of people, he had never felt more invisible. That night, looking out over the city from his cold, perfect apartment, a wild idea took root. The plan was bold. Some might even say insane. He was going to stage his own downfall. He would become a nobody. It was a kind of plot he'd seen in movies, a dramatic test of character that always seemed to reveal the truth. He decided it was time to turn that fiction into his reality. Working with his most trusted lawyer, he created the illusion of a catastrophic market failure. They funneled his assets into a maze of untraceable offshore accounts and cooked the books to show his company was about to collapse. Now, in the real world, a scheme like this is a serious federal crime, bankruptcy fraud, and it comes with a hefty prison sentence. But in his desperation, Johnathan saw it as his only way out. He was about to trade his designer suits for worn-out jeans and his chauffeur for the city bus. He was ready to erase Johnathan Vance, the billionaire, and become just John. The news of Vance Industries' collapse sent a tremor through the financial world. The so-called friends who were always clapping him on the back vanished overnight. His phone, which once buzzed off the hook, fell silent. He left his penthouse behind for a small, run-down apartment in a forgotten part of the city. The first few weeks were a rude awakening. He burned his first attempt at a real meal, had a legendary battle with a washing machine, and learned the hard way that the bus waits for no one. But in the middle of all that struggle, something amazing happened. For the first time, he felt free. Nobody knew him. Nobody wanted anything from him. He landed a job washing dishes at a small, family-owned diner. The work was tough, and the pay was next to nothing, but it was honest, and that's where he met Clara. She was a waitress there, working double shift to chase her dream of becoming a painter. She had a laugh that could fill the whole diner, and a kindness that just seemed to pour out of her. She treated John, the dishwasher, exactly the same as everyone else. She didn't care that his clothes were old or that his hands were chapped from the hot water. She just saw him. Their first real talks happened over shared plates of leftover fries after closing time. He learned all about her passion for art, her love for old books, and her relentless optimism, even when things got tough. He was completely captivated, not by some polished act designed to impress, but by a real person. He started to fall for her harder and faster than he'd ever fallen for anyone. But with every day that passed, the lie he was living felt heavier and heavier. He was building the most real connection of his life on a foundation of pure deception. Months went by, and John's life looked nothing like Johnathan's. He and Clara were inseparable. They spent their days off exploring thrift stores, having picnics in park, and hitting up free museum days. He helped her stretch canvases for her art, and she taught him how to cook something that wasn't burnt toast. He had never, ever been this happy, but his old life cast a long shadow. One afternoon, while walking with Clara, he spotted a former business associate across the street. Pure panic shot through him. He yanked Clara into a bookstore, his heart pounding in his chest. It was a close call and a terrifying reminder of just how fragile his new world was. The guilt started to eat him alive. Clara would sometimes talk about how much she hated dishonesty, about how trust was the single most important thing to her. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. He loved her more than he ever thought possible, but she was in love with a man who didn't even exist. She loved John the dishwasher, not Johnathan Vance, the billionaire who was playing a part. The breaking point came when Clara's landlord threatened to evict her. She was just a few $100s short on rent, and she was completely falling apart. John had to stand there and watch her cry, knowing he had billions of dollars just sitting in hidden accounts. He could fix her problem in a second, but it would blow up his entire world. He offered her his tiny savings, everything John had, but wasn't nearly enough. The agony of being so helpless, trapped in a prison he'd built for himself, was suffocating. He knew he couldn't keep the act up for one more day. The lie that was supposed to lead him to true love was now about to destroy it. He knew he had to tell her. He picked a quiet evening, his hands shaking so much he could barely make tea. He sat across from her at the small, wobbly table in her apartment, the air thick with tension. "Clara," he started, his voice just a whisper. "There's something I have to tell you. It's about who I really am." He started from the very beginning. He told her about the suffocating wealth, the loneliness, the crazy plan to fake his own ruin. He told her his real name was Johnathan Vance. As he talked, he watched her face change, from confusion to disbelief, and then to a deep, gut-wrenching hurt. The eyes that had always looked at him with so much warmth turned cold. When he finally finished, she just sat there in silence for what felt like an eternity. "So all of this, it was just some kind of social experiment?" she finally asked, her voice thin and brittle. "No," he pleaded. "Falling for you was never part of the plan. You were the only real thing that happened in all of this." "Real?" she scoffed, pushing her chair back. "Nothing about you is real. Not John. Not Johnathan. I don't know who you are. You built this entire relationship on a lie. You let me share all of my dreams and my fears with you, all while you were playing character. You watched me panic about my rent when you could have bought this entire building without even thinking about it." Tears were streaming down her face now. "I need you to leave," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know the man standing in front of me. Being told to leave hurt more than losing his entire fortune ever could have, because this time the loss was real. He had faked his own bankruptcy to find love, only to go emotionally bankrupt the moment he finally found it. So, what would you do if you were Clara? Is it possible to forgive a lie that big, even if the love felt real? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you subscribe for more tales that explore the wild complexities of the human heart. Johnathan didn't go back to his old life. He stayed in the small apartment, but he quit his job at the diner. The lie was over, and now he had to face the fallout. He spent weeks in a fog, walking through the city where the lights that once looked like a kingdom now just made him feel more alone. He knew saying sorry would never be enough. He had to show her he had changed. Through his lawyer, he used a small, legally accessible part of his money to set up an anonymous grant for new local artists. An independent panel chose the very first recipient, Clara. It was enough to get her a real studio and give her a full year to paint without having to worry about rent. She never knew the money came from him. Then one day, months later, he was in the park where they'd had their first picnic. He saw her sketching in a notebook, looking more peaceful than he'd ever seen her. He almost turned to leave, but then she looked up, and their eyes met. She walked over to him, a small, hesitant smile on her face. She told him about the grant and how it had completely changed her life. Then she said she'd been doing a lot of thinking. She had been furious. But she also realized she couldn't get the man who had listened to her for hours, who made her laugh, and who supported her dreams, even when he had nothing. "The lie was unforgivable," she said softly. "But the man I fell in love with, I think he was real. It wasn't a magic fix. Rebuilding that trust would be a long and difficult road. But for the very first time, there were no more secrets between them. He wasn't a billionaire or a dishwasher. He was just Johnathan, a man who had made a massive mistake and was desperately hoping for a second chance. Their story was a fairy tale ending, but something much more real, a love that had been tested, broken, and was now being slowly and carefully put back together.